So today I have with me Amber Letchworth, and we're going to talk about trauma and the survival skills that her and I had to develop because of our early childhood trauma, and how those survival skills that we felt that we had to develop to keep ourselves safe contributed to us being incarcerated. So Amber, will you please introduce yourself and sort of what you're working on now, and then we'll go into your story after you introduce yourself.
Yeah. So thank you for that introduction. My name's Amber Letchworth. I'm currently a JD student at Gonzaga School of Law. I'm an Indigenous woman, formerly incarcerated. I released here to Spokane, Washington, when I got out in 2014. We'll go more into that, I guess, maybe later. What I'm working on now is I got really involved with formerly incarcerated individuals and families. My first week out, I founded an organization called I Did the Time that was just starting to kind of get off the ground. And so those were kind of hosted as support groups every Wednesday night, similar to other recovery style meetings. We would go over group agreements and we would all just kind of come together, even people with no substance use disorders that are just trying to heal from the trauma of the prison system, or heal from the trauma of holding down their husband while he's in prison, or their child, or anything like that. Or we've even had victims of crime be huge supporters of our organization and come to these meetings trying to understand, why we don't have more restorative practices. And things like that, victims that never felt whole after crimes and things like that. Finding that program was really key in my transformation and my growth, because together with some other leaders, we started a nonprofit called Revive Center for Returning Citizens. We applied for 501c3 status in 2015, but did not really start doing any board development until 2017. We've really just been kind of slow growing over the last few years. And then now we're kind of getting bigger. We have a couple paid positions, mine included. Our two biggest programs today are our core competency trainings, which are kind of for us, by us. We found, every single one of our programs and everything that we do with I Did the Time and Revive Center for Returning Citizens is in response to the need of our community. So a big thing that our people need when we're getting out is culturally competent reentry services. DOC always slaps all these requirements on you of things you have to go program, you have to go do all these things that aren't, and take all these classes that aren't delivered in a trauma-informed way. They're not culturally competent. And so we developed it's a 5-day series of seminars that goes over ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences, surveys. Do you want me to explain that more, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Explain whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much you're gonna go into. Also, with all your extensive knowledge of trauma, mine's probably a really light overview. But so ACEs is these surveys of adverse childhood experiences, and it boils down to these 10 questions. I think you know more because the one you sent me had, I think, 13, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So kind of boils down historically, it's been just the 10 questions, and kind of addressing different traumatic events that happened before you're 18. Have you ever lost a loved one to incarceration? Have you ever experienced witnessing a loved one be abused? Have you been abused, sexual or other, verbally, and to those we assign a score, right? And so that's a really valuable program. So that's one of the seminars. Just kind of, we begin the week just by talking about trauma in general, and how that affects us. We do motivational interviewing, cultural, is it cultural competency? I want to say cultural competencies, but that's not right. I'm kind of drawing a blank. I'm also coming off of a long day of studying and classes and meetings and all of the fun stuff that I already mentioned today. So I'm having a brain fart.
You're in law school full-time and work full-time.
Yes. Yep. So
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I have 5 kids, so we'll go into that here in a little bit too.
All right.
So yeah, ACEs, trauma, cultural competencies. We end the week off with a race re-education, just talking about the history of race in America, how it's a social construct, and, how just all the disparities that continue to exist, systemic oppression, and just kind of, we keep the groups really small, to just, and keep the demographics similar to that of the prison systems, so that we can not necessarily control the conversations, but just try to make sure that they're weighted, against our community, and that everyone has that, that invitation for growth. So that's amazing. Having, a program that's developed by us for us. And then in addition to them getting a pretty cool certificate to show their DOC officers, we also pay them for their week. We pay them pretty well. And so yeah, that's a really exciting program. And our other program is our civil legal aid, that was developed in response to the 2018 House Bill 1783, where we attacked some of the disparities in legal financial obligations here in Washington State. And so, we were the advocates.
We became acquainted.
Yeah. So we were both advocates of that bill. We sat for 3-4 years. We kept bringing it back, and refining it, and kept getting shot down. And we just kept up our advocacy, kept organizing impacted voices until it finally passed in 2017. And but we always knew. I say we here at IDA at the time, we knew that it was going to be up to us to implement that bill, because of course they didn't provide any dollars for implementation. And, we knew that the county's clerks were just going to be, going crazy and trying everything that they can to hold on to that power, and try everything they can to not grant us the relief that's guaranteed to us under the new statute.
And for every 10,000 people that need civil legal aid in Washington State, there's one legal aid attorney. One legal aid attorney. Yep. So there's so many people that are, by the way that these policies are passed, and hey, they need to be passed. So at least we have an avenue for out and an avenue to help people. But the help isn't really there because of the way that it's constructed. There's not enough people to help everyone that needs it. And I remember speaking with you, and I think you contacted me, and it just showed through in your passion to want to help as many people as possible with getting their LFOs waived. And so that's why I always think of you when I want to talk to someone, and even in doing this interview, is that passion shines through, and you just seem to be always working to try to better the system. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So that initially, the civil legal aid kind of started in to file those simple motions, but we had to pivot the program into a virtual setting for COVID. So once we finally got a good system in place for that and start engaging with our client base, we have around 1,000 clients that are currently signed up that we interact with, in groups of about 30. And so what we're finding is that many of our clients have so much more needs, right? And so we've slowly been implementing risk needs assessments and things that, how can we use this interaction or to engage our people long term? And so
what are some of those needs that you're finding?
Sometimes people don't have any needs. It takes 15 minutes to fill out a financial declaration, get any verifications that we need. Boom, done. And then, but sometimes people need, 3 to 8 hours of follow along case support. I mean, sometimes, individuals need, they have parenting plans that they need looked at. They're going through a divorce and they can't afford an attorney, but they don't qualify for some of the programs around here, or they never get callbacks. And so we really strive to do some soft handoffs with our community partners and attorneys here locally to try to get all those legal needs met. In the meantime, while we're looking for funding to hire an attorney, we do all of that kind of on a just through community referrals, whoever has the grant, at the time. So we had one partner organization where they got all of our referrals for, X amount of months, and everything was going great. Well, now they're out of funding, and so they're still trying to gear up and do those things. So we're just having to shift and find new, bring on more attorneys that can take on the amount of referrals that we're providing. One and two, we're also pivoting, through interactions with the courts. So we've had a new clerk this year that wasn't familiar with the program. So we're just kind of getting that, breaking down that barrier. Now, we were getting some great results from and outcomes from one judge. And now we have a new judge that is not giving us good outcomes. And so we're having to kind of game plan tactics, to ensure that our people get the relief that is granted to them under the statute. So
can I just say really quick, and I'm sure we haven't discussed this, but I'm sure you can confirm this, that the income requirements for these programs, for these nonprofits and these state grants that they give to help people, the income requirements are a joke.
Yeah. The federal poverty line is a joke. The federal poverty line is a joke. Yeah.
The federal poverty line is from like 1960s.
And it was calculated by some secretary, like she added up how much money she spent on groceries and so, you know what I mean? And like just said, oh, here's the federally poverty. This is how much it takes. And that's literally how they assign food benefit allotments. And like it's so many of our programs are assigned by some secretary's whim of a number. Yeah, it definitely needs to be adjusted.
We as nonprofit organizations, we're it's not that we want to continue the cycle of trauma, but just by the very fact that we have to accept these dollars that have these income requirements is continuing the cycle of trauma.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not to mention the high barrier grants. I got to present in the Supreme Court symposium last week. And, one of the questions was, how are you guys funded? And I was like, oh, well, we're grant funded, but not in the way that you would think. Our small organization spends a lot of capacity applying for high barrier grants, and we're not getting them. Here we are, we're doing the work. We've been doing the work off of volunteer basis. When I first got out of prison, I was managing a grocery store, working 80 hours a week, and I still found time to serve and organize events and, find donations, fundraising, anything like that. But you just do it in addition to and just praying that someday that I could make a career out of this. And, I
think I went to a Children of Incarcerated Parents meeting, and they had the Washington Family Council there, and they actually did a whole study, and their study found that anything under like 120,000, if you live in King County or in Seattle, is poverty. And yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
You're not going to be able to afford to buy a home, which is like people's biggest asset.
Which is that's your free, your ticket into middle class,
Right.
Yeah. It's having equity, having access to any of those things. Yeah. So
it's really frustrating that that we're having to continue the trauma if we continue on this traumatic sort of system if we want to do anything.
My executive director and a good mentor of mine, Curtis Robinson, we were applying for this grant a couple of weeks ago. And we sit here, we'll pull all-nighters. Got to do what we got to do, and up against a deadline, and half the time we get it turned in, it's half baked. We would have loved the opportunity to do more, but it is what it is, and we do our best, and we both are at peace with that at the end of the day. But I didn't realize he mentioned something about the nonprofit industrial complex,
right?
And that I hadn't heard that previously, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, unfortunately, that's where we're at,
Yeah, there's, so I do trauma informed practices, trainings with nonprofits, and I always make sure to tell them that we have to push back on funders. Mm-hmm. Funders are the ones, and foundations and funders and the states that are giving these grants are the ones that need this training, because they need to know that what they're doing is continuing the trauma. And here's how. They're not funding organizations in a way that we can actually serve people. So we're just basically spinning our wheels a lot of the time, and we might be helping a volume, but we're not actually getting people to a place where where any problems are really solved.
Yeah. Yeah. So like our two biggest funders, Group Health Foundation and Better Health Together, both of those, the Group Health Foundation was like, hey, we know you, we see you, like, we know that you guys are doing the work. Here's unrestricted funds to keep building your programs. And that's how we were able to hire our first executive director and pull him away from he was already doing all the community work, but also trying to hold a job. So got to pull him away from, that, so that he can pour more energy into this. That really gave us the capacity to start our program development and really kind of bring some of our dreams to fruition, and keep assessing the community's needs. So that was the unrestricted funds. Then our next biggest grant, from Better Health Together, it's crazy. They were just so collaborative, the whole process. You always have, kind of like a say a schematic, for a grant application. What does this mean? What does this mean? And you have to just kind of like immerse yourself in all this new terminology and, and like all these things to try to put yourself in the mindset of these people that are going to be judging your application. And you have to polish everything, not in addition to learning a new language, you have to polish everything, make it all pretty, make it flow, the majority of, not the majority, I'd say, at least half of our community or our people have less than a GED or only have a GED. And half the time they got that from the prison system. So we all know, the quality of education that we receive in the prison. So
yeah, when I went to college, I had a 4th grade math level, 4th grade.
On your Compass test? Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in the lowest math possible. I didn't know what fractions were. I didn't know the times tables, any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I want to really spell it out here and how this nonprofit industrial complex re-traumatizes people, and just real clearly. So it starts with underfunding, understaffed, under-resourced. You start there. Then the programs that are developed and designed, they don't actually help people in the way that they need. So then that destroys the trust of the people, especially people that are formerly incarcerated. If we go to ask, we have pride. We have our own pride. So if I go to ask you, and it says your program does X, Y, and Z, and I go to ask you, and I don't get a call back because, and not anybody's fault. I'm not saying you, but any nonprofit, I don't get a call back because they're underfunded and understaffed, and they don't have proper administrative support, or I don't get the help that I really need, or it's some other help and it's halfway done. And then I lose my trust. I don't feel safe. I don't feel cared for. I feel like I'm just a number. And then I just give up. And why do I give up? Because, I'm just going to say for me, I give up because I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have ADHD. I have a depression. I have anxiety.
Abandonment issues, and you feel abandoned by, yeah.
Or I just feel like they don't care, that they're not really trying to help me, that I'm just a number. And so when that happens, I get overwhelmed. First thing is I'll get overwhelmed. And then if they put too many barriers, and I'll say, you know what, never mind. And I won't get that help. And you know what, that money is meant for me, people like me. Yeah. For a lot of these programs, that money, someone that is formerly incarcerated, has a lot of executive functioning deficiencies like I do, has a lot of barriers to success. Even though I have a law degree, even though I have a law license, I still have a lot more barriers than, a lot of other people because of my experiences. And you just can't access those resources. And so then at that point, you don't trust the organization, you don't trust the government, you don't trust that there's anybody out there to help you. Yeah.
And so I guess the other side of that is that, sure, a program might be funded, and then just when you start getting it rolling, then you're out of funding, and then you can't apply to that same source for funding again for 3 more cycles or X amount of years or whatever. And so they're constantly looking for funding. And unless you have, good money to bring on a grant writer, that's their sole job, you're always doing that in addition to all the community work and all the phone calls and, all the late night hand holding that it takes to do this work. And it's overwhelming.
And then even for me, as an attorney and working in civil legal aid, it was my experience, that I had to have a ton of clients. And each client I would talk to them and hear their stories. And it was very re-traumatizing to me because all of the memories flooded back in my mind about all of the injustices that I had faced. And so after speaking just with one person, sometimes I'd have to go lay down for an hour or two because I was so overwhelmed by their story. And I felt it so deeply, like in my heart, that it was hard to keep going on and make that
vicarious trauma. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's different for us too in peer work, right? Like you're describing, in social work, we call it vicarious trauma, where, you're a caseworker, you hear the stories and you have that empathy, you're being traumatized to it over and over again. And it just kind of makes you bitter or, helps you, it makes you burnt out, all those things. But I think that for, as peers, like you said, like you're describing it, is that it brings up that trauma for us again. And it's like, we have to relive it again. And, depending on how much opportunity that we've had in all of our survival, us just barely surviving, how much time have you actually had to deal with your trauma?
Yeah.
It's just, you're constantly being re-traumatized. And so it's like, you don't really get to process the stuff from your childhood. You're just kind of piling on top of that. And then you've just kind of learned to be hardened and keep going. And you can only count on yourself, and all those other survival skills. But yeah.
And it's a part of, these grants and the way these grants are made too. There's so many, it could be so much more trauma informed, and it can be so much more trauma informed by not forcing everybody to tell us every detail of their life and every detail of their finances and every detail of their everything that's going on in their life in order to get the bare minimum of help that they need to progress in life.
Yeah.
Why do we have to know all that? Why can't some things be automated? Why can't it be easier to get the help that we need? Why can't we help more people and spend more money on setting up systems so that we can help more people and have people less burnt out and have people not having to dig into every detail of their life just so that they can qualify for a little tiny bit of money and a little tiny bit of help?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we're going to thank you for that conversation, because I think it's a really important conversation and we need to keep having it. And then we also, I'd love to talk with you more about, how do we change the federal poverty guidelines? How do we change the state poverty guidelines? How do we change all of these barriers to getting the basic necessities met of our community? How do we do those things? And the more we talk about it and the more we bring awareness to it, the better. So thank you for having this conversation. I really do. I want to get into your life experience. We're going to talk today about survival skills and how the survival skills that I think both of us, you and I, had to develop, that we felt that we had to have and develop to survive and to live, had a large part in our later incarceration. So I think, and we do this with trauma in the back of our mind, in the trauma that we both experienced. So you already explained what adverse childhood experiences are. I have 9 of those adverse childhood experiences. And I mean, I don't expect you to, go into detail, but just, tell your story and then we can talk more about how that led to incarceration.
Yeah, I kind of have an interesting ACEs story. Anyhow, is I grew up very poor in drug culture, where I think I was about 2 or 3 when my mom quit using drugs on a regular basis, but all my uncles and aunties and that was still that they were still my influences. And, or, you know, her boyfriends, you know, anything like that. And so, I mean, you can imagine, that I am a perfect 10, when it comes to, ACEs, and I'm not ashamed of it because of a lot of the great skills that I was able to adapt and overcome, you know, and I think that, you know, going through those things as children, you know, you develop a certain level of resilience. And so, you know, I'm grateful for where I am today. But my first encounter with hearing about ACEs, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was being shipped up here to Medical Lake to Martin Hall. I think I was 11 years old, maybe 12. I can't remember which stint of incarceration that was. Martin Hall. It's the juvie over here.
Oh, so they can first were incarcerated when you were 11?
Kinda. So I was a criminalized youth. At the first time I can remember being in the back of a cop car, I was 7 years old. And I was walking home with some friends, and the cops came up to us, and some lady that was running pointed at us and said, "It was those kids right there." And he threw us in the cop car. We didn't know what was going on. Come to find out, there was a fire started somewhere within the vicinity that we were all walking home from. And she said that we were the kids that started it. So I mean, that was my first experience. It went on from there, as I started using drugs at 7, started smoking crack at 10, that morphed into a meth addiction. And after I got expelled from school, when I was 11, and that, you know, just kind of went downhill from there.
What did you get expelled from school for?
Well, someone had borrowed my backpack to rob one of our friends for a half ounce of weed. And there was a pistol in it, and I did not know that. And I was running out the door. I was already on diversion for something else, and so I had to go to school. I was about to get Becca billed, and you know, that was the thing. Kids can't get in trouble because you're bringing heat back to the house. You know, you got the cops showing up here. No, you need to go to school. You need to keep your head down, do your thing. So, you know, I was trying to do my best. I was getting to school, ran out the door, grabbed my backpack. I got to school, pulled my jacket out, and a pistol fell on the ground. And so I looked around, didn't think anyone saw it. So I put it back in my backpack, put it in my locker, and went to class. And, you know, I was pretty nervous, but I was probably a little too comfortable. Didn't really comprehend kind of the gravity of what was going on. Otherwise, I probably should have left. But at the time, it felt more important to be in school and to be, you know, complying with probation and all those other things. And so I made it through most of the day. And then around like 2 p.m., the cops and my principal came and got me. And so I was expelled that day.
What happens to you when you get expelled? Do you just go to an alternative school, or?
Well, I was expelled from the whole school district. So I wasn't allowed to go to any of the schools. And it wasn't until the following year that my probation officer advocated enough that I needed to be in school. And so I was let back into the school district, but I had to go to a different location for 6th grade.
Do you remember the first instance or life event that set you on the path to incarceration? Or was it a series of events, or was there something that's a defining moment that you can think about? That
led me to incarceration?
Yeah, even your juvenile incarceration, or.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember always feeling like I was gonna do great things. And so like, that's always been a goal of mine, was to break the cycle, but it just seemed like that everything around me would just kind of keep me down. Probably the school system, always being my behaviors and things always being criminalized. You know, you have a bad day, you don't get any sleep at home for whatever reason. You know, you go to school, you're late, you know, you're scruffy, whatever, your homework's crumpled. And all the teachers are doing is, you know, focusing on your actions and your presentation, and not really thinking about, you know, what's going on with this child at home. And I mean, we see it all the time. And so I would say that probably the school to prison pipeline is what set me up for incarceration.
I remember in school, and I have been diagnosed with ADHD now, and
me too. In my adult life, though, I'm 30 or 29. I just got diagnosed.
So I exhibited those behaviors in school, and nobody asked why. I didn't get any evaluations. I was just the bad kid. I was just always in trouble, always talking, always. And I was just looked at, but I really didn't feel myself to be that way. Just like you're saying, I felt like I was going to do great things. And so the people around me that kept saying what a bad person I was or what a bad student I was like, it made me be like, it made me feel like basically F you, just it's because I knew that I was better than that.
Yeah. So my family was very well known. Was from a very small town. I think it's like 8,000 or something. Lewiston is about 30,000 or so, but I think Clarkston's maybe 8 to 10,000, not very big. And so our family was very well known. Kids weren't allowed to come to my house because my mom was a known crack whore. Or whatever. She's not a crack whore, by the way, but that was the reputation. And even though she really tried her hardest, she got a job at the hospital, and there was about 8 years where we had as much stability as a traumatized woman who started having kids when she was 16 could have provided. Right. And so I love my mom to death, and it took me
in a small town. You do one thing and you're just branded for life, and you can never get away from that branding.
Right. And so I think, a lot of that fueled, and then, all my older brothers had behaviors too. And so, we just had, we kind of had a bad rep. So
fast forward, and how did you get involved with the adult system? Was it right when you turned 18?
Fast forward a little bit. I had quit using drugs. I moved out of my mom's when I was 12. And cause she had relapsed, and we weren't good together. So that was, what I needed to do to survive. But I quit using drugs when I was 14, just focused on getting my high school diploma, and I really thrived in high school. I got, 4.0 GPAs, but I could hardly get jobs and things like that. So, I would sell weed on the side, to pay my bills and things like that. In addition to, getting kicked out, I'd be renting a room somewhere, and then I'd get kicked out or whatever, or like cycling in and out. So I really felt like my life was on a better path, even though I was still engaging in survival criminal activity. And I think, I was, I think 16 or 17 when I got my only DUI. So I was sober from meth, which at the time was my drug of choice, and what caused, the most devastation in my life. But I wasn't acknowledging my problem with alcohol, and the relationship that I've had with alcohol since I was 7 years old. And so that was, I was kind of blind to that. So got that DUI, at the time I owned my own business. And so I just hired an attorney, sweep this under the rug. And so I didn't have any more charges until, until I think I was 20, 20. And I was a full-time student at WSU, pre-law. I had gotten a full ride from straight out of high school, and had moved.
Let me go back. So you did that well in high school on your own, and supporting yourself and not having any family support.
Correct.
From place to place and having all the instability, you were still able to.
Yeah. I moved 13 times my sophomore year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Living
out of a bag, literally. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you're at UW.
WSU.
WSU.
I'm at WSU. I had lost my grandmother, who was a very strong figure in my life. I was battling anxiety, depression. I had went from having a 4.0 in high school, and then I did Running Start, and I really thrived in the small community college setting. And I felt like I was I stood out, and all that that external gratification and, those relationships with teachers, kind of recognizing, that fueled me.
Validation.
Yeah. The validation.
I saw you.
Yeah. And I didn't get that from anywhere else. And, sorry.
Okay.
And so I didn't realize how much I needed that. And so when I moved to WSU, first of all, I had gotten away from my hometown, and lived over Seattle area for a few years and really, thrived there. Built my own business, started building, strong support systems. I still have my issues. I'm still attracted to chaos, all those things that we struggle with, still to this day, I'm sure. So I continued to have, all my trauma kept showing up in other ways, but I just kept trying to compartmentalize my pain and just kind of tough through it, white knuckle it, as I often call it.
When you say my trauma showed up in other ways, can you?
Yeah. The drinking, my choice in partners. I always felt like, like I never wanted, like I didn't want friends, and so I would just, focus on myself and know that I can only count on myself. And I was always so busy, working and going to school. And I played a lot of sports. I did a lot of club activities, tried to really make my resume stand out because I knew the only way I was going to go to college is if I got a full ride. And so, I really focused on that, but I just felt like for some reason, chaotic people were attracted to me. And I thought I really had no idea like why it kept happening or, why I kept, like my first serious boyfriend during high school turned out to be, and he was a little rich boy. And I was like, oh, this is different, this is way different for me. Well, it turned out he had a closet Coke addiction that he was fooling everyone around him. But I saw right through that. And I was just, so I don't know what it is. It's just something we always seem to find chaos and chaos seems to find us. So until you acknowledge that and acknowledge the role that it plays in your life, you can't mitigate it. You can't control it. You can't,
How do you acknowledge that? How do you even know when you're in the fishbowl? You're a fish in the fishbowl. How do you get outside of the fishbowl to look in and know what's going on?
I don't know. I didn't know what was going on at the time. I would just, and then, my girlfriend was just a flailing drunk mess who was always late for work. And I would try to lean on her to help grow my business and try to pay her more, so that she could kind of get out of poverty herself. But just very chaotic. And I think, it was that that internal need to try to fix people. Maybe I think that took a long time to accept that, and we'll recognize that. And then after, being a survivor of domestic violence in my childhood and then, being in, abusive relationships, I just kind of see those red flags and I kind of run the other way now. So
for me, if I'm honest with myself, I don't like to be judged. I don't want anybody saying any judgy comments to me. I don't want to be judged. So if I hang around with hot messes, well, they still judge me, but at least I'm not taking it so personal because I'm like, look at you, you're a mess too. So I feel like that's for me, why I would hang out with chaotic people and for a long time. And why I'm attracted to that is because I don't want to be judged. I don't want anybody to judge me or anybody that I view as superior to me or anybody that I view as, that I kind of look up to. I don't want to hear anything from them because it will destroy my ego and my feeling and my perception of myself, which I try really hard to hold on to that and keep a tight hold on that, even though, it's not a good thing to do, but if I'm being honest, that's why I do it.
I like to continue growing my understanding. A lot of that came from parenting. I adopted my brother's kids when he was in prison about 5 years ago. And so I'm 29, but I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, in addition to, my 14 and then my 4 and 5-year-old. So we have 4 through 16 at our house. But, no matter what we've done to provide stability for, our teenagers, they're still attracted to that chaos. And so, I like to just have conversations about it and normalize it, and like, be like, yeah, of course you're attracted to that person because that's what you're used to. And you want to fix them because you think it'll help you fix your mom, or, like any of those things. And so like, it's really been, one, like I said, parenting's further my understanding. And then, two, I think that, a lot of even just understanding like the biochemistry that comes with trauma, our sympathetic nervous system always being heightened, always being in that fight or flight. I think that becomes our normal. And so anytime we don't know how to be still. And so, I mean, even I've changed, I try to stay away from chaos, but I'm a workaholic, like I always have to be calming someone's storm. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's ever going to go away.
So when I think back about the survival skills that I created, was this persona of someone that would like get into physical altercations, would not take shit from anybody. Mm-hmm. Someone that would tell you,
someone who's hard and has heart.
Yeah, it would just tell you exactly what I thought about you, and I will do it in front of anybody. And so you better watch out, and you better not piss me off, because mm-hmm. I will be coming for you.
Yeah.
Not helpful.
No. And you and I probably would have went toe to toe, because we don't usually like other women like that. Or we tried.
Other women like that. All my friends are like that.
Yeah. I mean, we try to, but sometimes we'll get in those standoffs, or feel threatened by the other one. So we gotta take them out or whatever.
Yeah. So that's one. I felt like I had to lie over little stupid stuff. And then, lying over little stupid stuff leads to shame. And, I lived for a very long time, and I still live in like a shame-based existence from the childhood experiences that I had. So it's, my set base is shame and feeling like that I'm not a good person. I'm not good enough. And so everything kind of sprouts out from there. And so, I think a normal person, or someone that didn't have all the trauma, would lie, and then they would forgive themselves, and they would tell themselves, I'm not a bad person. And, I made a mistake. And
Jesus loves me, and I'm still going to heaven. Right.
Yeah. And they would recite back all the good things they've done in life. But for me, it's something that I live with, and I replay in my mind over and over and over again. And it could be days, weeks, months, years of something that I did that society said was wrong. And I mean, objectively, I don't know if it's wrong or not. But because of my shame-based existence, any little thing that I do, any lie that I tell, anything that I do that, I think I feel bad about it for a really long time. And that goes back into the sympathetic nervous system and goes back into all the physical manifestations of trauma, and that's what heightens the fight or flight, mode. And it's bad on your body. It's hard on your body. It's fatiguing. So I can't show up, 100% for all the things that I want to show up as because of my shame-based existence. And that's directly related to, the adverse childhood experiences that I've had. So yeah, it's all connected, and it's rough.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I've never heard it explained in those terms, but I think that's what life has taught me, all the institutions, whether it be the school or CPS or the courts always telling me, that my behaviors meant that I was a bad person. You internalize that from such a young age. And it's just interesting the way that you're describing it. I guess I'm operating from that too. And it's funny because I always tell people, that I did my time in my own head when I was in prison. A lot of people were, playing pinochle or whatever. And they'd be like, how come you don't want to come out and play cards with us? And I'm like, I was popular in high school. I didn't come here to make friends. Or like, just kept reading and like really delving into my culture but I would just lay there, and I'm an insomniac too. And so I would just stay up all night and just replay those old tapes and replay all the shame and, and then like I also planning for the future, but wondering like, how am I ever going to come back, from that? And then the shame of being in prison itself, when I always thought that I was too smart. I was always like, oh no, I'm too smart to go to prison. That's never going to happen to me. I'm different. I'm meant for big things, even though society has always told you that you're not, for some reason, in your heart, like you said. We've always kind of known that we were going to thrive in something somewhere. And so, yeah.
Some other survival skills that I would say: living a double and triple life. And there's something that I read in I read a lot of books. I read a lot of books on leadership and do I want to be a leader? No, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of responsibility. But I just am. So I need to figure out how to do it the right way. And one of the main things about leadership is being one person. Being who you are in private is who you are in public. And I just feel like being one way, living life a way that I can be proud of, in private and in public, is important, because then I can go out and I can say my truth. And if nobody likes it, then I'm sorry for you. But if I'm living, one way in private and one way in public, or, I'm over here being in my alcoholism or drug addiction, and then I'm over here telling everybody, oh, when you get out, don't use drugs when you get out of prison, but I'm doing it myself.
Yeah.
or I just, you can't be as I read this and I resonated with it. That is, you just can't, for me, I can't be as powerful of a leader as I know I can be if I'm not living one way. And what that trauma does is it makes you split off into compartmentalizing and saying, okay, well, I have to show up this way at school, and I have to show up this way at work, and I have to show up this way with my friends, and I have to show up this way at home. And because that's, the way that's accepted in all those various areas. And
you're trying to please everyone, because that's that people pleasing that we do too. Yeah.
That's a part of surviving. Yeah. You can, if you don't please people, you might not have a home. If you don't please people, you might not have food. If you don't please people, you might not have money. If you don't please people, you might be shunned or ostracized from a community. It's like, especially when you're poor, you need people. And even if you think you don't need,
you need community. That's the only way that we can survive. Oh yeah. Big time. Yeah. So something that I really clung on to in my studies was code switching. And that's, I've always done that. And, and it's I don't know if it's to the extent of like double or triple lives, but, I'll definitely crack different set of jokes around my homies than I do around my law school professors. But I'd like to think that I'm always still the bubbly, like my personality is the same, but my content changes, and that's just something that, that we've always done to survive. Yeah.
So I just, like, for me, I like to bring who I am and my personality, and the fact that I know pop culture, and, I like to talk and make weird jokes. And I like to bring that into my professional everyday life and just talk about it and be real about it and just be who I am, because that's me, and that's how I am at home, and that's how I'm at work, and that's how I am wherever I go. And just being okay with that, and like getting in touch with my dark side and letting people see my dark side, because we all have one.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, was it in prison that you started to make the change, or was there, like, for me, let me just tell you my experience. So I was in prison, and I had a cognitive behavioral therapy class, and it was taught by lifers on a video. And the man said, everything that you think is not true. And it's like a cognitive behavioral therapy thing. And, up until that time, I believed every thought that I had. And I really attribute the change in my life and the changes that I was able to make with like that simple concept.
He said, everything you believe is not true.
Everything you think is not true.
Everything you think. Yeah.
And I will never forget that. And I can see his face. And so that had a lot to do with a lot of the changes that I was able to make. So I'm just wondering, when was that time for you that you thought, I have to make some changes, and this life is no longer acceptable for me, and this is the way I'm going to go? Like, what was that change for you?
There have been a few, I think, like monumental times in my life, right? Because I kind of did it like I was trying to raise myself, and that was confusing for a child. So I think that my first was seeing everything around me going on around me. It's at home, and I was like, I'm going to be better than this family. I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to treat my kids better. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And like always, I just remember I would get in an interaction with a caregiver or something, and I would be like, I'm never going to treat my kids like that. And at like 6 years old, like those were my thoughts. I don't know why, but so I've always kind of had that. I'll never forget the first time I think I was 15. I was a freshman in high school, and my biology teacher came in one day and said, "Hey, we're not going to talk about science today." And he took the whole class period. He wrote up on the chalkboard 2 pages. So he wrote, one here and one here. And he wrote, one of them was our environment, and one of them was who we wanted to be. And he just took the time to tell us about the way, kind of our presentation, the way we show up in the world. And I had gotten so close to this teacher that I felt like he was speaking to me. He knew that I was homeless. He knew I was in an abusive relationship, and so I was just totally engaged for that 52 minutes. And he was talking about, so in our environment, that's the way that our family talks. That's the way that our parents believe in politics. That's the religion that, any of the beliefs and values that operate within our family system. We internalize some of those. We pick some of those, and some things are transferred over to our page of who we are. But some of them aren't, right? And so that was the first time that I realized that I didn't have to be my environment. I didn't have to be, I wasn't put in a box of, my life wasn't predetermined, predestined, or anything like that. And so that was really a defining moment for me. I think I went home that night and packed my bags and moved out of my abusive boyfriend's house and, started being homeless. But that was being homeless, independent, and like starting to heal was the first step in my journey. And so there's that, I continued to struggle, as you can imagine, throughout high school. But I think that, that was a big one.
I just want to say real quick, tears are healing. And I promised myself a long time ago, if I feel like crying, then let myself cry, because that's part of my healing process. That's just for me. So I always honor tears, and I just feel like they're so healing and so amazing. And I love tears.
So by the time I had quit fighting, or, I fought my case for 6-7 months while I was in county. And so by the time I had gotten shipped off for my small 20-month sentence, I was a short timer. So I didn't qualify for any of the programming. So I had to wait until I was, because of my crimes, I had to go to maximum, and then I had to wait to be reclassified to get to minimum. So by the time I finally got to minimum and had access to programs, I did every volunteer program. And I'll never forget, I think I was at this Latter-day Saints thing, just to get out of my cell and whatever. They brought an acoustic guitar, and I was like, yeah, it's cool. I don't know what you guys believe, but I'll come chill with you for an hour every Thursday night. And we're sitting there I remember it was one lady one night, and she just had everyone in the room crying. And she said, "It's okay. Tears make room for Jesus." And that's always kind of been in the back of my mind. Yeah. I don't know. I loved it. And that's, this year has been really, really hard on my family, my kids. And so I think I've cried more this year than I have probably my whole life, because one of the survival techniques that or survival skills that I had to have was, I was raised with all brothers, very abusive stepdad until I was 7. And, we weren't allowed to cry, and that's like, men don't cry. Well, I'm a girl. Well, quit being such a pussy, anything like that. So that was, I had a spouse tell me one time, a boyfriend tell me that I was emotionally constipated because I didn't cry. And like, no, I don't know. It was just weird. So I didn't do that for a long time, and I didn't give myself that grace. And now, so now I cry anywhere. And so I always warn people, I'm like, yeah, sure. You want me to come, you want me to talk about my story? I'll probably cry, but is that okay? And I don't ever want to be so desensitized, to my experience to where I don't feel that anymore. Cause I think that at that point, I don't know. I just don't know if I would be as effective or passionate, or I just feel like I would sacrifice some kind of part of my soul when I can tell my story with a straight face, then that's terrible, because I've been through a lot of terrible shit. So, so yeah, I don't remember what we were talking about.
Oh, we're talking about the defining moments in your life that kind of changed your thinking and made you want to continue to strive to be what you can be.
Okay. Another kind of
15-year-old biology teacher.
Yeah. Mr. Kirking. I love him. I want to find him again.
Hey, Mr. Kirky.
Huh?
Hey, Mr. Kirky.
Hey, Mr. Kirking. Yeah. I did look him up this year. He retired last year. I was trying to get back in touch with him. So that was a pretty big defining moment. I would say my DUI, but no, that didn't do it, because I just bought my way out of it. Right. So, yeah, that was, didn't learn much from that. So, back to my WSU story, I talked about how much I needed that validation, and I wasn't getting that at WSU. At WSU, I'm in class sizes of 500 students. And, it's kind of hard to stand out when you're with people from all over the country that they were the best at what they do too. So, so I really kind of fell into the shuffle and, kind of got lost. And then I wasn't extraordinary anymore. I was just average. And and I didn't know how to cope with that, because, that was a big part of who I was. I was extraordinary, and so, trying to cope with that, in addition to being near my family, and, in our culture, if you don't engage in substances or criminal activity, then you think that you're better than everyone, or, no matter what you're trying to do with your life. I just, people just always make you feel like shit for it. I don't know how to explain it, but
yeah.
So I was
crabs in a bucket.
Right. So I was sitting there trying to kick it with my crabs, trying to, to hang out with my brothers or anything like that. And they just always, the bond was gone. So then I start having a couple shots of whiskey with my brothers, or, smoking some weed or whatever. And, all the while that stint of sobriety, I never went to any kind of, substance use treatments or any NAs or AAs. And so I didn't have the skills in place for a relapse, because I thought that, I wasn't, I'm just never going to do meth again. Like, that was so foreign to me. Like, when I quit doing meth when I was 14, I was like, I'm never going to do that again. And it was so, oh, sorry. It just seemed so, relapse seemed so foreign to me that I didn't prepare myself for that. And so, the rejection from my family, coupled with the depression and the anxiety, from losing my grandma, in addition to, kind of like, I kind of had identity and role confusion, those same, the stages of development that a kid usually starts in their adolescence. Well, I didn't really get an adolescence. So I was just kind of starting to experience that, and like, who am I and what do I stand for? And then, you're so bright-eyed in university education, where everything kind of pulls you that way. Oh my gosh, maybe I believe this, maybe I believe that, so I was really just trying to figure out like who I was and who I stood for, in addition to all of that, all of the mental health struggles that I was having. And I started, just started declining. So my, whatever part of intelligence, whatever, your good brain or whatever was telling me that I needed to put systems in place to get out of to get out of school, because that was not a good environment for me, but I knew that was going to be my ticket out of poverty, and I wanted to keep my full ride. And so I started to take a medical leave of absence. But the addiction and every other thing that I was going through didn't give me the follow through. And so I ended up I just quit going to class. Yeah.
Do you remember what that felt like physically? Because when stuff like that happens to me, and it's happened a few times in my life, it was just like my mind went blank, and like I was just too overwhelmed. And then the problem seemed so huge that I just could not do it. I just ran away.
You mean like with school? Like what? Like the feeling with school?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I was just really. Yeah, I remember feeling, well, one, I had a head injury. I was walking home from a party, and my friend and I had gotten robbed, and someone knocked me out with a 3-foot mag light. I thought it was a baseball bat at the time, but anyway. And so I had this head injury. And so that I was super confused all the time. Like I was having all these physiological effects from that. And so like starting to fall behind, and I started like gaining weight, and that couple, doubled, tripled my depression. And it was kind of like a really like slow, like a slow fade, but I just felt like, and then, the fear of success, right? That we all kind of go through. I felt like, I don't know. But I definitely didn't feel like I belonged there, or that I couldn't do it. But I don't remember feeling necessarily any type of way. I don't know, other than confused. And there was just so much going on at the time that.
So when I got out of prison, I went to an Oxford house. I'm still friends with some of the ladies from the Oxford house, and they said that I was saying I was going to go into law school way back then. And I don't remember thinking that or saying that, but when did that idea come in your mind?
Very young age, actually, because I've always been very argumentative. And so I don't know if it was my influences or what. Maybe I think it was my mom that told me, oh, you'll make a great lawyer. And I was like, lawyer, huh? Like, cool. They sound like they make a lot of money. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And, that was, I don't know. I've always, and then, I did debate in high school, but always putting myself, and then went on the pre-law track. I've just always known that that's where I wanted to be. When I got out of prison, I stayed stuck at my minimum wage job for 3 years, and I moved up to management, still making minimum wage. And as I started growing, and I was so scared to go back to school, because I was like, fuck, I left WSU in such a mess. I was like, sorry, I didn't mean to say that on your show. Okay, sorry.
Some things can only be expressed through swear words. Sometimes,
right? I was like, I knew that I wanted to go back to school someday, but I thought that being an attorney was so out of the realm for me. I thought no one would ever forgive me, and all that shame. And so I thought that social work would be a more forgiving field. My mentor, who created I Did the Time, Lane Pavey, is an MSW, and she actually started I Did the Time in a policy class at Eastern Washington University. And so yeah. So I went into social work, but even in social work, I wasn't as attracted to the micro-based social work, which is providing services and things like that, as I'm attracted to policy creation, which we call macro level social work, the things that can help the greatest number of people. And so that's kind of where I've gravitated towards, and a lot of the legalese in that. And so as I was finishing my bachelor's, and as Tara Simmons was challenging, her character and fitness rejection, and then seeing the Supreme Court ruling coming out of that, I just felt so empowered. And so, I just decided to apply to law school in addition to my MSW program. And I got in and was like, okay, I'm doing this. I only applied to one law school and was like, okay, like I'm just throwing it up, to the creator. And if that's what's meant to me, then I'll know for sure. And here I am. So
what do you, if thinking about today, what are some of your survival skills that are hardest to shake even today?
Asking for help. Life has taught me that you can't ask for help. You can only depend on yourself. So that, I'm breaking it down, but you have to constantly remind yourself. Right. And so, in management and director positions, delegation becomes an issue. Right. And then, the very imperfect quality of thinking that the only way it's going to be done right if you do it yourself. I hate that. I believe that sometimes. Done right. Huh?
Why does it need to be done right all the time?
Right? I don't know, because I'm a perfectionist. That's another one of my survival skills that I can't stand. I would say my aggressiveness. I love my aggressiveness, but it causes me a lot of problems. Not a lot, because I've created a life for myself to where I don't have to care about what other people think. But definitely it's still, it comes up a lot. I'm very blunt, all those things that you were describing. I've always been that way. I always call people out on their shit. And so that's a problem, because people, especially in the work that we do, people don't like to have the mirror flipped around on them. They don't, they'll preach it all day of how, and call other people's things out, but no one likes to hear it themselves, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely that operating from a shame existence that you were describing, can't shake that, just, trauma triggers in general, it's the littlest thing sometimes, my kids were flicking on a light on and off one night, and I was like, stop doing that. I flashed back to when me and my brothers were doing that, and we had the shit beat out of us, so it's like little things sometimes. And, I don't know.
For me, people can say things that shouldn't bother or wouldn't bother someone.
Ooh, my defensiveness.
Yeah. And I will go ham and I will ruminate on it for weeks. And, and that's, again, that physiologically it's a problem, because if my mind's going and all that negativity, it affects my body, it affects my productivity, it affects my attitude towards everybody else professionally and personally. And if I'm affecting my people personally, then that's going to affect me professionally. So it's all a big cycle, and it all comes down to my body too. And like not having as much energy as I could have if I had positive thoughts and saw things in a positive way. Yeah.
I saw something. Oh, go ahead.
No. Oh, go ahead.
No, finish.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry. I saw something the other day that said that loyal people get defensive because they would have never done that to you. And I don't know. I mean, it was a meme or whatever, right? So it probably was way bigger than that. But that's what I took from it, and I started thinking about that, and I was like, oh, we take it so personally because we would have never done that to you. And that's another one of my big faults is I'm loyal to a fault. People can do me wrong, and I will always take them back. Even people that I know aren't good for me, or for whatever reason, because I'm connected to them for whatever purpose that they served in my life. They're part of my journey, and so that loyalty just lies very deep and very thick for me.
Another one for me is disrespect. What I view as disrespect, and then that to me is huge. And I've been doing some research. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, you're frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay, so I've been doing some research on that, and that comes from trauma, and complex trauma is the feeling like you're being disrespected a lot or not being able to tolerate disrespect, which, you know, in all reality, people don't mean it mean half the things that they say. They don't even know what they're saying half the time. And then they're really not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just taking it that way. But that's a survival skill that I had to develop to ensure my safety. And it's a survival skill that, you know, that I need to learn how to turn on its head and see things a different way. And I'm trying to do that every day. But it's, you know, that's one of those ones that I haven't been able to shake.
Yeah. And I think that even some of the things that people say trigger some of our trauma and trigger that shame response. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay. It says webcam utility beta.
Yeah. It's my camera. Let me see. There you go. Here I am. See me?
I need one of those.
Technical difficulties. Yeah.
I had lighting difficulties. I feel so pale under this fluorescent light. I feel like I'm in prison. Like you're literally performing this from the prison cell. It's not good.
Yeah, you were telling me about your survival skill.
Yeah, you know, that defensiveness. I was just kind of expanding, or I guess kind of processing what you were saying. And then I reflect on that a lot because especially with my 16-year-old, he's super defensive and then I'm super defensive, like in response. And sometimes we get nowhere, or maybe he's defensive because I'm defensive. I don't know. But you know, I spent a lot of time thinking about that and just replaying conversations over in my head. Like, oh, was that me that took the conversation that way? You know, like just acknowledging that, or
acknowledging, like trying to acknowledge your part and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part about why we created this program, the core competencies, because of how our trauma affects us and how we interact with people and how often our people are coming from that place of shame and that defensiveness and you know, like you were saying, that feel like their needs aren't being met from the system, and you know, they can't trust anyone, and so we don't acknowledge the role that we play in our own demise sometimes. That all of the compliance models that are set up within DOC and within any kind of institution, how, you know, if we're not complying, then automatically then it jumps straight to this level of resistance, or this I don't know what word I'm looking for, but not reluctance. I don't know. I was thinking about like resisting arrest. My mind's going crazy.
On you. Well, they just put this label on you that you're doing something wrong, or that you're wrong, or that you're bad, and that goes back to the shame that I am bad.
Yeah, and
shame-based existence.
Or like they'll be like, calm down, and it's like, I am fucking calm. You know what I mean? Like, and we don't. The worst thing you could say to someone who's feeling heightened is calm down, right? And so yeah, you know, just kind of training our people about motivational interviewing skills, and you know how sometimes our delivery ultimately results in us not being heard, right? Us, you know, responding with yelling or getting defensive or any of those things, then that turns off whatever person in power that we need to move us to the next phase of our life.
But it is those people in power. Those people in power can't hear that. But if we're talking to our peers and people that understand where we're coming from, I hear it loud and clear. But it's those people in power that can't hear that, and they're the ones with the money, and they're the ones with the decision-making authority.
To move us to the next level, right? To help us get anything, you know, to move us up the mountain, or even Haslow's hierarchy of needs. Even sometimes it's as simple as, you know, getting your basic needs met, you know, anything like that. So that, I feel like that program is going to go far, and is so needed, because we don't realize how people perceive our actions, and so many people don't have the understanding of trauma that's needed to even interact with us, right? They're not trauma informed. It's so.
I like how you're segueing into the solution, because that's how I want to, we'll end this pretty quickly, but I want to just talk about the solutions that, that you've identified policy wise, and, some of the things that can be done within these various systems that we have to interact with as formerly incarcerated people. What are some changes that you see that can be made to better serve us as a people, and to make sure that we're not cycling in and out of the criminal justice system, and to make sure that our children aren't cycling in and out of the criminal justice system, and our grandchildren, that we're stopping the cycle?
Yeah. I think that the only way to address disparities, whether it be, race, poverty, anything like that, and is to make sure that impacted voices are overrepresented in the solutions. And so for me, that looks like, more of the nonprofits, more of the state funded, the people that don't have to fight for their funding, right? More jobs for us peers, that we can make a living wage, and we can do all these, we can achieve, this American success.
Let me just stop you right there. So when you say a living wage, what do you think a living wage is?
Oh gosh, right now, at least $20 an hour.
Okay. So I think a living wage is $40 an hour. And I think that
for where you live, it is. Yeah. Yep.
And I think that people that are formerly incarcerated or have high levels of trauma, and that have had to navigate these systems, and that do not have college degrees, their experience should be recognized as college degrees.
Yes.
And that they should be paid.
We are the experts. Absolutely. That is and that they can't do the work that they do, or that they can't get the funding that they have. They can't get the jobs that they have. They can't get the fancy director positions or, anything like that. They wouldn't exist without us. The prison industrial complex wouldn't exist without being built off the backs of our trauma. So yeah, acknowledging that and paying us for our expertise.
And not only that, giving us a voice at the table. So you bring me in, and because I don't have a degree, and I'm just a peer support specialist that actually has all the knowledge, I don't have a voice at the table, and I'm scared. I may be scared or not scared to speak up for, the experience of the people that I'm serving. And then even if I do, my voice doesn't get all the way to the top. So I think that, peer support people need to be at those tables, at the very highest levels of those tables.
No decisions about us without us. Absolutely.
Ooh, say that again.
No decisions about us without us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I love that. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would want to make sure that people know?
Yeah, I would just say, don't be afraid of the word trauma. I was in an interesting meeting with the very prosecutor that prosecuted me for my crimes a couple of weeks ago, and we're extending our program down to more rural counties, which is where I'm from. And so we're in a meeting, and apparently I use the word trauma too much, and he's like, I don't really like that word. I think that, and you got to be careful who you say it to, because people use that as an excuse and a cop out for their actions. And I was like, oh, I guess that is one way to look at it. I was like, oh,
sir, have you been sexually abused? Oh, sir, have you been physically abused?
I did not go there, because I play nice with these people. They're the gatekeepers in providing services for our people. So, that goes back to that code switching, and so, I just remember saying, what people are going to do with the information, what they're going to. I can only extend the invitation for growth and share, one, my experience, and two, all the empirical evidence that's out there. And, we know that our prisons are 80% full of traumatized individuals, if not more. And what does that say? And we have to acknowledge that. We have to feel okay talking about it. And so I would just, trauma comes in many forms. Just because someone grew up, with money or whatever, or lived a different existence than us in poverty live, doesn't mean that they don't have trauma too. So yeah, I wanted to say that.
Well, I really appreciate your time. I could actually sit here and talk to you for maybe 20 more hours. So
we can do that later.
Yeah, I'd really like to work with you in the future. You did a wonderful, interview, and I appreciate all your honesty. And thank you so much for being willing to share your story and being willing to share your experience. And I hope that these insights and these things that we talk about can continue to be talked about, and people can learn and grow from them, and find inspiration.
Yeah, me too. Samesies.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's the end.
All right. You did it. Another one down. Huh?
I said, hasta la vista.
Yeah. Have a good day. Let me know if you need more people to interview. I would love for you to interview our director and my new support staff. I don't know if she's ready. She just got out in August, but just keep the conversations rolling, keep doing what you do, keep being passionate, and keep showing up.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.